This is one of South Africa's three capital cities, Pretoria, aka Pitori. Pretoria has a big problem. It's supposed to be in its prime, but the city is physically falling apart and has been for a while. Turns out urban renewal does not renew. Instead, we have cases of urban decay today. I'm talking about the abandoned and forgotten buildings in Pretoria. And I want to show you a prime example of this urban decay. This is Schubart Park, and it was doomed from the start. In the 1960s, social housing projects were the talk of the town around the world. Apartheid South Africa was paying attention.
Inner city populations grew, planners had to come up with innovative ways of housing people, and so the notion of streets in the sky was born.
They wanted a way to get white people to be a proper middle class in the country. So in 1976, they commissioned Schubart Park as a place for white people to live and be closer to the capital. This was particularly for civil servants. Someday, I'll tell you about how many of these people got their money together and established what we know as this fancy Pretoria East. Anyway, an underlying goal of this was to keep these people away from the racial intermingling that was happening downtown in a place called Marabastad, still there today. The government would not let white people be equals to other people, particularly on the basis of class. That is a threat. The Schubart Park complex was planned to have 4 buildings with a total of about 800 units for families to live in. And they targeted young professionals, like I said, civil servants of the government. To attract them, this place was meant to have swimming pools, tennis courts, shops, and all these amenities you could think of. It was meant to be a city within a city. And apparently the waiting list was pretty long, lasting years even. But Schubart Park had problems from the start. There were issues with whether the state or local government would be handling this whole thing. Over time, it wasn't being taken care of, and the project was running out of funding. The idea of it being a city within a city made it quite isolated, and hence good ground for crime within the place itself. So it wasn't so great to live in at some point. By the 1990s, people started moving out. Remember, this is around the time we're hitting 1994, right? South Africa becomes democratic. And with this comes some new policies, such as racial integration and income integration. So the whole social housing idea is still well and alive for Schubart Park at this point. Before 94, apartments at Schubart Park were allocated based on being white and a minimum income level, right? In other words, they were not so friendly to poor white people. There's a whole other area for those people in Pretoria, right? Pretoria West, which maybe we'll talk about at some other point. Anyway, these changes led to the community of people who live there being quite complex socially and racially integrated, right? Crucially, it also meant class dynamics shifted. Fast forward a couple of decades, this place has become run down, crime-ridden, and pretty ugly. In the middle of all of this, Schubart Park got hijacked. What's a hijacked building, you wonder? Well, basically a couple of guys shake down the owner of a building and then come over to your building and say, hey, we run this now, you pay us. There's a whole movie about this.
What if he goes to the police?
Okay. This is purely a civil matter. There's no such thing as theft of fixed assets. The police can't do nothing about it unless the owner gets a court order, and that will take him around a year or even more.
And all the time we are collecting rent.
Hallelujah, my brother.
In 2011, it got more chaotic. The city cut off electricity and water to about 700 families living there, and the city said they hadn't been paying for these services. Obviously, people were not happy, and this resulted in protests. Protest. It doesn't work. People get evicted. I remember seeing news of the red ants removing people from their homes. The red ants are like the specialists of eviction. You don't want them showing up anywhere. A fire was started in the middle of the whole ruckus, and there were fatalities. It was terrible. The city would eventually relocate these residents, at least some of them, but the place was sealed off and became abandoned. So, there's Schubart Park, lying idle, we've all forgotten about it. And then in 2023, The city says, yo, we've come up with something. Hang tight. We're going to sort this out. We're going to have affordable housing again. Yeah, who knows? It will be easy to say the whole problem with Schubart Park was integration, right? The social problem, but it's not. Clearly, there was a lot going on. And during apartheid, maladministration and corruption and poor planning, all of these things were quite rife. And they still are today, still a problem for South Africa today. We're only talking about one building complex. There are many other examples of urban decay in Pretoria. In fact, just down the road, there's this building. This is Schubart Park. You don't want to go there. That's a red zone. Years ago, people jumped out of the top floor windows to escape a fire here. These buildings are spread across the city. For some, we don't even know who the owners are. Apartheid record keeping wasn't that great. I'm not even sure how old my grandmother really is. But some of the records were actually destroyed. Anyway, I wanted to give you an overview of urban decay versus urban renewal. I would love to do a full in-depth documentary about this and even talk to former residents of places like Schubart Park. But I don't have a drone. I need someone who has a drone that's keen to collaborate to make such a video together. So if you're that person, please give me a shout. Let's talk. Let's explore this beautiful, nasty city of ours.